You have some very strong opinions, and I want to know, does the Libertarian Party as a whole in Minnesota, in our Minnesota community, reflect some of the opinions of a Thomas Massie? And what does it say now about uh, the friction between the Thomas Massie Libertarian wing of the Republican Party, the president, in wake of this statement by President Trump, and what I welcome? Obviously, I'm on his side of the thinking with this. Is like, hey, BB, you're out of your mind. You're going way too far by anybody's sane's measure. What's your take on the president's comments lately, and some of your views about foreign policy?
I hate war just as a principle, like foundational principle. That's, that I guess that hatred is not going to go, it can't go too far, especially having seen on the ground the effects of the Iraq war and what it did to, individual people. So the Libertarian Party as a whole, like one of the founding principles is being anti-war. And I think a lot of people misunderstand that, where they're like, oh, you guys are anti-war, that means you're pacifists. Absolutely not. You can be against violence against peaceful people without also being a pacifist. What I would consider it more is like a sheepdog mentality, like you're protecting people, you're making sure that the vulnerable are not being taken advantage of. There's always collateral damage in wars. You can try to avoid it, but it's going to happen regardless, right? And so the LP as a whole, that's like that's a line you don't cross. So you can't be pro-war and be a libertarian. That's like saying that you're a Republican and against guns. Like
Right.
it's not possible, you know. So the special with Massey, kind of embracing I would say some of the libertarian
Yeah.
values, because you're going to get a wide range of opinions from other libertarians on how libertarian he is, right?
Right.
But him embracing some of those anti-war principles is definitely going to cause a friction in a political party that doesn't see it as a problem as a basis of foreign policy. And again, it's just like for us, it's a line you absolutely cannot cross that. And it doesn't make us a pacifist. It doesn't say that we're not willing to be violent, but that we choose restraint over like just being violent across the board for any situation. And that's how the United States bases all their foreign policy, is just being like, hey, well, if you don't do what we say, we're going to just go blow you up. That's
Right.
that's not good for anybody.
Where what, if anything, would you say is a justifiable means for war? What situations could you see, let's say in the coming future, with the geopolitical landscape the way it is today? What things would be a justifiable reason for America to go to war?
If there was a government that organized a military and came to our borders and invaded us, that's war.
Would the border
And
be
it could look like that we're just defending ourselves, and keeping our civilians safe. But other than that, there's not much.
what is it? Would the border be would the border be the continental U.S., or would it be the outer ocean, ocean territory? Is there some line out there that that you would regard as our Navy having authority or supremacy in the seas, crossing that boundary?
No, that's civilian. If we start to take civilian casualties, if neighborhoods are being overrun by people, when we have military bases, and we have them all around the world, right? And if we have a military base that's hit in retaliation to something that we've already done, that's not justifiable to just start bombing their cities. That's not enough. So if somebody,
But
let's say theoretically,
do you think that, let's say, where we draw our line, our red line for our Navy, if the Chinese Navy sails across that line, would the Libertarian Party be in favor of the United States Navy engaging the Chinese Navy in the seas? or do we have to wait for the Chinese Navy to make landfall in America to strike back?
There would have to be some sort of military act of aggression, simply being present and without knowing, like, we're talking about hypothetical
Hypothetical, right? Right.
situations. And, when all of these kinds of things, if they were to ever happen, you would have a whole lot more information to be able to give a
Right.
much better, well-informed, make decisions on, your actual situation on the ground.
Right.
But there would have to be some sort of intentional act of aggression. Now, if the Chinese, they're not going to accidentally start shooting missiles at Philadelphia, right?
Right.
That's an act of aggression. That is, we need to defend ourselves. We need to, but that also doesn't, that's not far enough for me to just be like, hey, we need to turn around and invade China as a result. Our best offense is a good defense. And so we build up our defensive measures here. We've made a lot of enemies around the world. We build up our defensive measures here. I'm even as far as being like, our troops that are all across the world, we need to bring them home. And this is our number one priority. We
Yeah.
have relied very heavily on the strategic location of the United States globally, as because we're surrounded, we have two oceans on both sides, and we only share a border with two countries, neither of which are a uh, clear and present danger to the United States, right? And so,
I'm not sure about that. I regard what's happening in both Canada and Mexico, particularly more specifically Mexico, with the what appears to be a strategic alliance with China and allowing them, increasingly
yeah,
allowing them a footprint in Mexico. So where would the libertarians stand on a thing like this? If is using our military as leverage or a deterrent to a smaller, less powerful country like Mexico to tell them, don't let China build up bases, on our border. Is that something that the Libertarian party would be in
I
favor of?
having it like, well, it's the same with like Ukraine and Russia. Like
Right.
Russia's like, hey, NATO's too close to our borders, right? And so then
Yes.
they turned around and retaliated. If Russia is building a base on the Mexican border with the United States, that's intentional. It's again, without like having, you
The
know,
details. Yeah.
yeah, this is going to, we're just talking hypothetical situation, but China would not build a base on the Mexican border accidentally. You know what I mean? But I am always would be working in favor of trying to make friends, not enemies. And I don't even know if that's even possible with China in today's day and age, but maybe it could change somewhere in the future. I don't know. But like relying on each other for perhaps trade and saying, hey, we don't miss, maybe we don't see eye to eye on things, but there's some mutual benefit. We have something they need, they have something we need. But there's a lot of that already going on with China and the United States. Um, so, it just really depends on all of that. But like, just being part of, I think being having, I don't know, maybe it's just me, like that kind of military mindset where it's like, just you scan a room and you're like, you identify the things that are potential threats. I do that when I go to a restaurant. Like it's kind of ridiculous actually. But just being aware of what your circumstances are and what your situation, things where they could get out of control, maybe they haven't yet, but there's a potential there. There's no reason not to know those things and to kind of, catalog them in your mind, especially when you're intentionally, you need to, your responsibility is to keep our borders and because our people are inside of our borders.
Right.
We need to keep our people safe.